Hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Advocates Academy that we share monthly, and very excited to have all of you join us today. Today, we're going to be talking about Alzheimer's impact movement, which is a very important aspect of the Alzheimer's Association. Just a few housekeeping items for all of you. As before, and as we normally do, if you have any questions, please put in the chat box. That way we can have a chance to read your question and respond at the end of each presenter's portion. So without further ado, to keep us on time and to keep us going, let's go ahead and get started in discussing the Alzheimer's impact movement. But first, I want to first quickly talk about our wonderful staff here in regions 2 and 3. This staff covers California, Hawaii, Nevada, in Arizona. So we have Susan DeMorris on the top left. There's me, Josh Buchanan, Ian Ross, Nicole Gutierrez. Jared, I'm gonna have to space on your last name. We have James Fitzpatrick, Jessica Rothar, and Daniel Gaetan. So Jared, please do put in your last name for me. And then finally, we have contact information for all of us, so no matter what chapter you're in, or if you do want to reach us, do reach out to your public policy staff if you have any further questions regarding Alzheimer's impact movement. And there you can see information for the Aloha chapter, Desert Southwest, our California State Policy Office, the Northern California, Northern Nevada chapter, and the Southern California chapters. So do reach out to us. If you have any questions, reach out to your public policy staff member, and they can help you, reach out to AIM or help you with any of your advocacy work. So to get started, I want to introduce our 3 amazing speakers we have today to talk about Alzheimer's impact movement. Our first wonderful speaker is John Funderburk. He is the Vice President of Advocacy in the Alzheimer's impact movement. Some of you might have seen him in DC Forum. Some of you might have heard him speak at our retreats. John is a wealth of information on Alzheimer's and public policy, and we are very grateful to have him all the way from the East Coast joining us today. One of our other speakers is going to be Teresa Valco. Teresa Valco is a phenomenal ambassador from the California Central Coast chapter. She's a member of the AIM Leadership Society, and Teresa has been part of all aspects of her chapter. So full mission volunteer, has done some amazing work in her community. And then finally, we have Jackie Corey. Jackie Corey is a board director of AIM. She's a member of the AIM Leadership Society. She's board chair of the California Southland chapter. Jackie does a lot of amazing work in the Coachella Valley, which is Southern California, Southern Eastern California, and has really elevated our issue in Palm Springs and the surrounding areas. So all 3 of our volunteers and our speakers today are going to talk to you about the Alzheimer's impact movement. So to get the conversation started, I'd love to pass it off to our first speaker, Jackie Corey. Jackie, take it away.
Thank you, Josh. Hi, everybody. Impressive number of attendees these weekly calls, interest and passion around being trained as advocates for your tolerance. It is a wonderful 5% humidity level here in Rancho Mirage, where I live, which I love, but it leads to a lot of dry coughing and stuff. I keep a throat lozenge in my mouth so that I'm not constantly coughing. AIM is start with some very basic fundamentals about the Alzheimer's impact mission, and then we will progress into some details and specifics as we move along. On the slide that you see now is a high-level overview of what AIM really is, and I'm not going to read this to you, but I'm going to give you important facts to know about the mission of the Alzheimer's impact movement. It is a stringently nonpartisan organization. It is a nonprofit, but a specialized kind of nonprofit, which we'll talk about in a moment. And thirdly, all of its work is in very close strategic partnership with the Alzheimer's Association itself. We actually refer to AIM as a sister organization, or sometimes we call it the advocacy arm of the association. And Josh, you can just stay right there on that slide for just a moment. As I said, we'll start with some background. So background on different kinds of nonprofits and why AIM and AIMPAC are a different kind. There is sort of a mixed bag of nonprofit designation. Probably the most typical kind is a charitable organization that has a classification code of 501c3. Those organizations have to protect their tax-exempt status with the IRS by not engaging in much political campaign activity and not spending a substantial part of their efforts trying to influence legislation. Now, we all know that as lobbying. So these 501c3s are prohibited from doing much of those activities. But another kind of nonprofit designation is a 501c4, and the C4s can do most of what I just mentioned that C3s cannot do. And so C4s are able to really deeply engage lawmakers on elements of their job, really across most of the work that these lawmakers are doing. So in our case, the Alzheimer's Association is a 501c3, that more typical charitable type nonprofit, and AIM is a 501c4. Because of the benefits of having both, in the year 2010, the Alzheimer's Association created this C4 sister organization called AIM. And its purpose was really to advance the legislative priorities of the association. So whether lawmakers are doing their electoral work or their political work, whether they're in their office or out on the campaign trail, AIM can engage them. And AIM has a PAC, as you see on this slide. Now, we know that PACs have a pretty high effectiveness in the federal political arena. So just as a way of explaining that, all of us as individuals can and should support the candidates of our choice through our votes, through our campaign contributions as best we can. But PACs can amplify our voices by unifying the entire PAC membership so that key legislators are better educated, and it gives us the means for even more concerted political action, no matter how large our individual contribution may be or how small it may be. So that amplification is what is important here with the PAC. We now have 5,000 members of AIM, and we know that AIM is truly leading the conversation on Alzheimer's priorities at the federal level. And Josh, on the next slide, we'll take a look at these pie charts, and I don't want to ask you to strain your eyes to read the fine print here. So let me just call your attention to the pieces of the pie that are the three largest. We just look at the three largest pieces. Those represent 70% of the total time spent by our federal policymakers. And this is what they do in those three pieces of the pie. They're actually working on legislation. They are involved with their constituents and the services that they can help provide to them, and they're working on political campaigns. Sometimes that's their own campaign, sometimes it's campaign for a colleague. AIM is our mechanism that ensures that we're engaged with these lawmakers in everything they do, but especially those top three parts of their work. That's 70% of their time is where we're especially engaged with them. So no matter where they go, whether they're in their DC arena, whether they're in their in-district offices, whether they're out in the public with constituents, whether they're on the campaign trail, AIM is there. Josh, next slide. Now, I bet some of you have seen this before. We're proud of this and we love to see it and talk about it. we all know that the mission of the Alzheimer's Association is really threefold. It's about care and support, it's about risk reduction and early detection, and then it is also about research. So we're going to talk about how AIM affects all of those parts of the mission. This slide addresses research. So just as a little background here, and Josh, let's just go back to that research slide for a moment, please. We know that as much as the Alzheimer's Association itself raises private funds for research, we can never do as much as the public funding that can come from our government, and that is absolutely essential to advancing research in monumental ways that our constituents deserve. And so when we first formed AIM, like I said, in 2010, if you look at this chart on the far left, you'll see that the federal government, through the NIH, National Institutes of Health, was funding Alzheimer's and other dementia research to the tune of less than $450 a year. And then once AIM was formed, you can see some gradual increases over the next few years, and then years, not so gradual at all, but actually some pretty significant increases. As a matter of fact, if you look at this whole chart from 2011 to now, you can see an astonishing 6-fold increase. That's like 125% increase in funding from the national government. So, you know, we have a lot of superlatives that we love to use and toss out, like unprecedented and historical. And in this case, they actually do apply. So this last increase in 2020, fifth consecutive historic increase passed by Congress. So call it unprecedented, call it historical, it is all of those things. And so what does that really mean? Well, the work of many of you and AIM and building these relationships with Congress, we now are expanding. We have more scientists come for the field of dementia research. We have more clinical trials and importantly, the science community is able to now have more strategies that work concurrently than we've ever had before. So we see a lot of studies on, of course, amyloid, and now more studies on tau. We see studies on we see studies, many more things, all going on at the same time. Stop here and just say, I don't think it's possible to overemphasize the importance of this, you as advocates, and building relationships with your legislators. And I also don't think we can thank you enough for all of that. And so I'll just say again, thank you, and look at some results. And Josh, if we could go to the next slide, here are even more results that you have achieved through your advocacy. These are some of our more recent policy victories that aren't about research, but are about care and support. And I don't even need to go through these with you because I know you guys all know what these are. HOPE and RAISE and BOLD and PETA, really significant changes in the field of dementia care and support. Thank you for all you've done. And now let's move on to what our current priorities are. So Josh, on the next, it's pretty obvious that COVID-19 has changed a few things for us. So the priorities that you see here look different than they might have looked back in January and February, and rightly so. Priorities that you see, the first four are very directly related to COVID-19. And so they either didn't even exist before, or they've certainly moved up the priority list since the pandemic has struck. So let's just talk about these briefly. On the first bullet, you see they're promoting Alzheimer's to prevent elder abuse act. This would require some dementia-specific training that would be made available to professionals that are on the front lines of supporting victims living with dementia. So these would be people like law enforcement and prosecutors and judges, medical personnel, sorts of people. I will also mention, because you're going to be seeing it if you haven't yet, there is another bill called the Elder Justice Act that was actually enacted back in 2010, but it is soon due to be. And so this bill that you see as the first bullet on this slide is a companion. It's going to complement that Elder Justice Act. So we'll be seeing more of both of these. Improving hope. Oh, I want to mention before I leave the Elder Abuse Act, we already have several co-sponsors for that, and in a moment we'll move to another slide that has a full list of those. But I just want to mention and just do a shout out to the advocates on this call. You guys represent 4 states here in this region, and so I want you to know that Prevent Elder Abuse Act has 10 Senate co-sponsors right now. We're just beginning, but that includes from this 4-state region, Senator Jackie Rosen of Nevada. And then this bill also has 12 House co-sponsors. And from our region, that includes Congresswoman Debbie Lesko of Arizona, and then also Congresswomen Maxine Waters and Katie Porter, and also Congressman Juan Vargas, all of California. So kudos to any of you who have helped promote that kind of support. And like I said, we're just beginning, but this bill is off to a good showing of support already. Improving hope, I think you already know what that is. We got the Hope bill enacted a while ago, and so now this Improving Hope would require more outreach by CMS, Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, to healthcare practitioners, just ensuring that their patients with Alzheimer's are receiving that wonderful comprehensive care planning service that was made available through Medicare. Just because you make something available doesn't mean it's being implemented and put into good use. So that's what Improving Hope is about. The third bullet here, ensuring safety measures. Now, this is brand new because this is totally centered on COVID-19. The Alzheimer's Association released new policy recommendations in May as in a response to COVID-19, because we know that long-term care facilities are hit very hard with a pandemic such as this. 50% of residents of nursing homes and 40% of other long-term care facilities are living with Alzheimer's and dementia. And so they are some of our most vulnerable in the population. So this set of safety measures and recommendations includes, I think, 4 areas fundamentally: PPE, personal protective equipment, enhanced testing for COVID-19, transparency in terms of accurate reporting and timely reporting, and then fourthly, surge activation protocols. And then that 4th bullet is an interesting one. Congress has a couple of relief bills that they have passed in very short order in light of the pandemic. And there has been included in those relief for some small nonprofits, fewer than 500 employees. The Alzheimer's Association and AIM are advocating for an exclusive fund that would support larger nonprofits of employees of 500 to 10,000. That would include the Alzheimer's Association, but many other healthcare organizations, many other nonprofits that we would consider essential to the population. And so we have submitted that and are in talks with members of Congress about that. And then the last bullet that you see here is not new. It is exciting that we still consider a top priority to be increasing, yet again, the commitment to Alzheimer's. So the last professional judgment budget that was submitted to Congress by the scientists at NIH, the experts there, asked for an additional $354 million in research support. And that, if approved, will bring our total funding to an astronomical and yet still not enough $3.1 billion. Now, we can all imagine that Congress has a lot on their plate right now. There's a lot of uncertainty, and they have a lot of priorities to juggle. There's no doubt about it. So we consider this challenging, but because of the deep relationships that AIM has been able to build with influential members of Congress, I will just say that we have reason to be very optimistic about this. There's no guarantees, certainly, but I'll just leave it at that. We are optimistic. And Josh, on the next slide, we have that full list of co-sponsors for the Elder Abuse Act. I'm sure as advocates, you've received some calls to action about support for this bill, and you'll continue to see those. And I know some of you in districts of these supporters will be asked to send thank yous as well. So be on the lookout for those emails and those communications to be coming to you. We're going to pause here for questions. We have John and Teresa and Josh, all experts on all of these topics, to answer any questions that you may have at this point.
Susan, do you see any questions in the chat box we can maybe answer?
I do, but I wonder if they're best. So one of the questions that came, and if Jackie can't answer it, perhaps John can. I'm a little confused about the difference between AIM and AIM-PAC. Can this please be explained again? I think we're going to hear about AIM-PAC shortly.
Okay, I'll take a stab, and John, please step in.
Sure.
I think one easy way to think about it is that AIM is sort of the administrative piece of that organization, and AIM-PAC is the working piece of that organization, if that makes sense. So AIM-PAC's members are asked to be very involved from a grassroots and a grass tops level. AIM has the staff that administers that works on strategies, that develops some protocols, and puts structure in place for AIM-PAC to go do its work.
That's right. And Jackie, I would just expand on that. We get this, Christy, we get this question a lot. And a lot of times I break it down to very simple. AIM is not a political action committee. It's not a PAC. AIM has a PAC, just like as Jackie said. Legally, just to get a quick legalese on this, in order for anyone who'd like to contribute to AIM-PAC, they must join AIM first. And the government agency that oversees all of PACs and money in politics is called the FEC, or Federal Election Commission. And the FEC classifies anyone who joins AIM as part of the solicitable class. So once you're a member of AIM, you can or cannot, we hope any AIM member does contribute to the Political Action Committee. So that's just a quick difference in the two.
We also had a question, thank you, John, for that, and Jackie. Partha asked, is it okay for Alzheimer's Association volunteers to write letters to elected officials asking them to support certain legislation? Wouldn't that be lobbying?
It is. The association and AIM have lobbyists that are paid and that file the correct paperwork, proper paperwork yearly for that to be able to lobby. However, as volunteers, advocates, You can write your member of Congress. You can call. None of that, of course, has to be reported. And the association and AIM work very hard to train volunteers, advocates across the country just to do that, essentially to lift your voice, share your story, which is without question your most powerful tool as an advocate, and ultimately change the minds of lawmakers. Great question.
Great. And Josh, that's it for the questions for Jackie's section.
Great. Thank you, everybody. Jackie, we'll move on to the next slide.
Great. So just to piggyback on a few things that Jackie talked about, one thing that I really want to emphasize once again is that AIM, the association and AIM, are complete approach this work completely on a nonpartisan basis. We know that this is a nonpartisan issue, crisis, if you will, but it has got to have a bipartisan solution. And so if you look at things like how AIM interacts with candidates, how AIM PAC contributes to those candidates, it is truly 50-50 down the middle. Red and blue, as we all know, make purple, the color of the association and this disease and AIM. And we know that by having the ability to share our personal stories, talk to lawmakers about what is needed in terms of new policies and changing policy around Alzheimer's and dementia, that ultimately we're going to be solving for this crisis in the months and years to come. So one of the things that we do through AIM is take an opportunity every 2, 4, and 6 years. Every time there's an election, when state and federal leaders are standing for election, we take that opportunity to share our stories, to have advocates approach candidates who are running for either State House or Congress or the White House, share their story and ask them a simple question. How are you going to fight Alzheimer's disease if you go to Washington, D.C., or Sacramento, or Phoenix, or anywhere, any state capital? And one of the things that we've been doing over the last year and a half is really engaging the men and women who are running for president. We did this in 2016 as well. We started early in the presidential primary process in early 2019, really focused on some of the early primary and caucus states like Iowa, South Carolina. We did a little bit in Nevada and California even last year, places like New Hampshire. During that year, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of advocates were approaching these candidates running for president, sharing their story, and asking again a simple question. How are you going to fix this disease when you get to the White House? And we saw over those months and over 2019, this issue, Alzheimer's and dementia, really become a rising issue out there on the campaign trail. And so I'll show some slides. If you move to the next slide, please, Josh. Just a small snapshot representation of all of the candidates. Alzheimer's advocates talk to every single candidate running for president on the Democratic side and Republican side. Of course, there were a lot more on the Democratic side in the last year and a half because of the incumbent president, although there were a few early on, a few Republicans running in the primary. We took that opportunity again to have those conversations. And all of our advocates approach these conversations just like that, as a conversation. They're not demanding anything from candidates. They're not going to beat them over the head and say, give us more money for NIH. They really are sharing their story and starting a conversation. Something fascinating happened throughout this last year. We started to see candidate after candidate, for the first time in many cases, share their own personal Alzheimer's story. We asked, for example, Senator Klobuchar about Alzheimer's disease, and very publicly she shared the story about her dad. We did the same with Senator Cory Booker, who talked about his father's dementia. As wonderful as our advocates are in places like Minnesota and New Jersey, as many conversations as they had had with these senators over the years, their own personal stories hadn't really come out in these conversations. And so what our advocates were able to do was create an environment that made it okay, that it was comfortable enough for these candidates to share their personal experiences with Alzheimer's disease. Now, the two people that I just described, of course, are no longer in the race for president. They're not going to win their party's nomination. But most importantly, they're going back to the U.S. Senate. So we are ending at a place now in this primary process so far ahead of where we were 18 months ago with all of these candidates, because we have turned them into champions. They've heard stories. They've shared their own personal stories. And that means we're going to hold them accountable and keep working with them as champions, whether they're in Congress or governors or anything, whatever they do, they're now partners in this process. Next slide. One of the things that has been great the last couple of years, we've really tried to educate everyone who comes to walk and any of our events that the association holds to let them know about AIM. We also, of course, want to make sure that anyone who participates in these events has the opportunity to become an advocate, share their voice, ask an elected leader to change Alzheimer's policy. I've been really excited to see in the last couple of years a growing number of state leaders, of members of Congress attend our community walks. I know throughout California, Arizona, Nevada, and Hawaii, all of you have had lots of elected leaders at your events, and we want to continue to see that, especially in this new world where we are right now, this current state during COVID-19. Walk and other events are going to look a lot different. You're going to have more virtual events, but still those opportunities for elected leaders to participate, to raise awareness in their own districts, in their own communities about Alzheimer's and about the work that the association and AIM are doing. We've been really excited to see how many, just in the last couple of months, how many members of Congress, for example, and state leaders are doing Zoom events just like this. They're doing virtual town halls and meetings, continuing to connect with their constituents, and our advocates are there. We're talking about the policy priorities that Jackie just talked about at the federal level, but we're also doing that across all 50 states and talking about the state-specific public policies that we're working on. So we're excited to see this grow in the next couple of months, walk season. Next slide. One thing, I just invite anyone who is listening today and watching, please, if you want to, you can take out your cell phone now. You can text AIM to 52886. You can get more information about the work that AIM is doing. If you'd like to, you can join AIM through those links, but ultimately you're just signing up for alerts when we go out, when we need action in Congress, even at the state level, when action is needed. We can text members and people who are interested, so please do that if you're interested. You'll see lots more information. I'm going to talk about that towards the end of the call with lots of resources on the AIM site. Next session. Next slide. One of the things I wanted to point out is for those of you who are members of AIM, first of all, thank you so much. It is, as Jackie talked about, it really is making a difference on how our elected leaders are working on Alzheimer's disease. AIM is a member organization. It just takes $20 annually to join AIM, and there are lots of opportunities for AIM members to recruit friends and family, other people in your network that you want to bring into this fight as advocates and members of AIM. We have a program called Power of 10, and really it's a peer-to-peer recruitment challenge for any member of AIM to take part in. If you're a member of AIM, you'll see your own personalized dashboard on the AIM site, allsimpact.org. But I just wanted to give you a snapshot of some of the fulfillment packages we have for recruiting different levels of members of AIM. I think I apologize. I see a typo in one of them there. But for recruiting 10 new AIM members, we recognize you in our monthly and weekly letters, give you special treatment at the Advocacy Forum, which is held in Washington, D.C. Every year. Moving up, increasing that to 25 new members. We have free registration to the next Advocacy Forum, VIP reception, and a couple other items for you. And then finally, and there actually, I think there are a few of you on this call who recruited 50 or more AIM members, all of those benefits above, and making sure that you have a very special Washington insider experience when you come to Washington, D.C. So we're excited to continue to grow AIM. You heard those numbers from Jackie earlier. We're really looking forward to increasing AIM's imprint, not just on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C., but in every single state capital around the country. We've got 146 days to the November election, and we're going to use every one of those days as an opportunity to connect with lawmakers, to connect with candidates, share our stories, and make sure that they return, either go to or return to elected office as champions in this fight. Next slide. And Josh, I guess we want to pause, Josh and Susan, pause and see if there are any questions.
John, there are. I heard from Bob Panzer, and Bob's question is, because bipartisan support is needed, I know it's important to have a balance of co-sponsors for bills we are advocating. Therefore, some must wait before being shown as co-sponsors. How do we know they are waiting to become co-sponsors?
If the question was, who do we know who's waiting? We don't have that list just yet. For example, the list that Jackie shared on the elder justice bill is the most up-to-date list. We just got that. It's a great question, though, because a lot of times as an advocate, you'll get a commitment from your member of Congress that they have co-sponsored the bill, but then they may not show up for several weeks or maybe even a month or more. That's because the chair or the chief sponsors of those bills want to make sure that there is a balance, Republicans and Democrats. So quite often you'll have maybe 10 or 15 Democrats or 10 or 15 Republicans waiting to join. We get updates regularly from those sponsors. And then as we get updates on who's on the waiting list, we will share those with our chapter field staff as well. That's a great question. I wish that once you got the commitment, we could go ahead and see that live and official, but there is a little bit of a process that again, sometimes can take a couple of weeks.
Okay. And this relates a bit. Mark White asks, where do we go to find out if our legislators are co-sponsors?
Great question. I think one of the best places to go is a website called congress.gov. You can look at any bill, any of our bills, but any bill before Congress, current or past, to see how members what members have co-sponsored, to see if your members have co-sponsored. You can also see a history of your members of Congress on a wide variety of issues, of course, on our issues as well.
Great, thank you, John.
And that's it, Josh, for the questions.
Wonderful. So great questions. And again, a reminder, if you have any questions, please put it in the chat box. Now's a great opportunity to hear from John and all of our great speakers, and they have so much information to share. So the next speaker I want to bring up is our amazing Teresa Valco. She has so much wonderful information to talk to you about in regards to really growing AIM and really growing the Alzheimer's impact movement in your own community. So Teresa, take it away.
Thanks, and thank you, Josh and Susan, for inviting me to be here. It's so nice to be here with Jackie and John, too. Y'all did a great job of introducing AIM and explaining how it operates. Shout out to everybody that's made Power of 10. You're my heroes. As Jackie mentioned, AIM is a membership-based organization. We've been talking about that, and with that in mind, the formula is a simple one. The larger membership base we achieve, that means the more effective the organization is, and that's why growing AIM is an imperative in order to maximize our efforts on Capitol Hill and in state houses across the country. Next slide. I've been asked to talk a little bit about recruiting for AIM because I've recruited at least a couple of people. Recruiting new members for AIM is something that I'm very passionate about because I am so impressed by the way in which AIM has propelled the mission of the Alzheimer's Association. I'm so proud to be an AIM member, and I know that I'm contributing through my membership to all of the successes you heard Jackie speak about, and recruiting others to be a part of these successes is a logical next step for me as an existing AIM member. Next slide, Josh. My recruiting style begins long before any conversation begins. It starts with my social media, and then I augment that with efforts by speaking whenever possible, whether it's virtual or in person now. Because AIM supports the mission of the Alzheimer's Association, I use social media and speaking to raise concern about Alzheimer's and other dementia, and also raise awareness about what the Alzheimer's Association is doing in the fight. I then explain how AIM is supporting the mission of the Alzheimer's Association, bringing all of their efforts to raise concern and awareness, to provide care and support, to support research into Alzheimer's and other dementia, how AIM is raising all of those to higher, more effective levels. Many of my posts, as you could see here, are things that I repost from other sources like the Alzheimer's Association, AIM, which is All's Impact on most social media platforms, and even various other chapters, anything that brings awareness to what's going on. After that, next slide, Josh. Then I start laying the groundwork for a real conversation. By doing that, I first make it personal. I share my personal connection with Alzheimer's, and I create lots of posts around my activities, what I'm doing to move the mission, including all of my advocacy work and other involvement that I have with the association, such as through Walk, The Longest Day, Community Voices, attending AIC, and so on and so on. I do this because I believe that folks are more likely to listen to people who are active in their beliefs. I believe in the Alzheimer's Association, I believe in AIM, and it shows through my efforts. When I then talk to people about AIM, they know that I have firsthand knowledge about what AIM is doing, and they're more willing to listen. Next slide, Josh. So right now, we're kind of in the golden time for letting the world know what the Alzheimer's Association and AIM are doing. We're in the midst of ABAM, which now we all know because of last week is Alzheimer's and Brain Awareness Month currently, and we're approaching walk season. So there are no better, no-brainer platforms for us to use to start raising awareness about Alzheimer's Association and AIM. For instance, in addition to social media posts about ABAM and Walk themselves, you can reach out to the Walk manager in your area and ask if you could just have a couple of moments to speak at the Walk kickoff meeting or Walk committee meetings to talk about AIM. To me, every Walk committee member should be an AIM member. They're obviously already passionate about the fight against Alzheimer's and other dementia. It's a very logical step for them to become AIM members in addition to what they're already doing for Walk and Longest Day. I've even spoken to Walk committees for walks that are outside of my area, because one advantage that we have now is that everything's virtual. So you can hop on meetings that might not be just in your neighborhood. And remember that AIM is not limited to any geography or specific chapter. Around Longest Day this year, I'll actually be jumping on virtual meetings that are going to be going on across the country with TLD teams talking about AIM. So use this. And with COVID, we know that Walk and Longest Day are going to look different this year. A lot of folks may have some disappointment around that, but if you ask me, it's a total turn lemons into lemonade situation as far as AIM recruitment's concerned. We can now talk about AIM in many virtual rooms and not be limited to just our own Walk and our own TLD activities. Next slide, Josh. So to talk a little bit about the process of recruiting, having those conversations and getting someone to join, there are a few different ways of starting those AIM conversations and joining AIM. I found that email is very effective. I follow up when I either talk at a meeting or attend a meeting and talk with people. I seem to always work Alzheimer's into my conversations, even if it's not an Alzheimer's-centered meeting. I follow up with those people the following day with an email explaining to them a little bit more about AIM and giving them the link to join. That's a very, very effective method for me to get new members joined up. I also use the messaging systems within the social media platforms. These are very effective because I post so much about my activities with Alzheimer's and AIM. I get a lot of comments, many of them expressing gratitude for what I'm doing because they themselves have a personal connection to the disease. When I later see these people as being live on that social media platform, think about Facebook, how it lets you know who's online currently. I will reach out to them in a private message, make sure, first of all, that they're aware of all the programs and services offered by the Alzheimer's Association, and then I'll eventually start talking to them about AIM, and I can, I usually have a membership out of that, I would say almost 100% of the time. Texting is also good, but I will tell you it's a little bit laborious. We have this great code that people can text in to join that John mentioned earlier, but it is a multi-step process. So what I've found is if I don't stand with the person and actually walk them through every step, if I leave, if I walk away, they don't end up completing that. So texting's good as long as you have the time to spend with those people during the process. All right, next slide, Josh. So I threw this in just so it would be in the slide deck for everyone to have later. This is an example of a follow-up email that I've talked about that I often send out the day after a meeting. There's some, ideas you can take as far as wording or composition. You're welcome to steal everything. Next slide, Josh. And then I also mentioned putting a link into your messages and your emails. And I just want to show you quickly if you were to find those. If you log into AIM, once you're a member, and of course I expect you all to be members by the end of today, you'll see that under your name, you'll have a profile that you can click on, and then a membership tab underneath that. You'll see a screen that looks like this. The referral link that has the arrow to the left is the one for general referrals. That's the one you'll probably use the most. And then the referral link with the arrow to the right is the one that we use around walk. So anytime you speak to a walk committee meeting or you're at walk and you recruit someone, use that link. So, all right, next slide, Josh. So I approach my activities with AIM and recruiting for AIM with the basic philosophy. Those of us with personal connections to Alzheimer's and other dementia all share some feelings as a result. We have all felt frustration, grief, helplessness, and we all hate Alzheimer's and other dementia. Our experiences with Alzheimer's leave us feeling as if there may be nothing we can do, because there's nothing we can do right now to cure it, to stop it from progressing, or to prevent it. Not yet. My volunteer activities with the Alzheimer's Association give me a sense of gratification of knowing that I'm helping others facing this disease right now, and my advocacy work and participation with AIM give me a sense of actually changing what's happening with Alzheimer's disease and other dementia. I've seen what AIM is doing to bring an end to Alzheimer's. Those of you who have been to State Day and to Forum have seen it too. I've seen what AIM is doing to help those facing Alzheimer's and other dementia right now. We are beginning to gain the upper hand on this heartbreaking and frustrating disease, and AIM is what's making that happen. When you share that feeling with your friends and others, and then you invite them to join AIM, you're giving them an opportunity to experience those same feelings that you have. Being a member of AIM and knowing that your membership is driving us closer and faster toward a world without Alzheimer's and other dementia, that's an opportunity to change those feelings of helplessness and frustration into feelings of being part of meaningful change. Last slide, Josh. Next slide. So AIM isn't an empty vessel of an organization, it's people. I am AIM, you are AIM, we are all AIM, and we're doing more to drive the mission and create a world without Alzheimer's and other dementia through our collective strength. So, okay, go out and tell the world, let's build AIM and let's end Alzheimer's. Back to you, Josh.
Thank you, Jackie. I really appreciate all you've said, and you reminded me myself that I I need to re-up my AIM membership. Just because you joined AIM 1 year, every year you need to re-up it. So I really appreciate that reminder. Contributing to AIM and just really helping to support AIM and just bringing that message forward. Susan, do we have any questions for Teresa?
We do not have any questions for Teresa. Clapping, thumbs up and clapping. We did have one person mention that the International Research Conference is now online and free, and it gives us all an opportunity to participate in that. But that's not a question, just a comment I wanted to raise. I'll turn it back to you, Josh.
Thanks. So I just want to call Jackie Corey back up to really talk about another aspect of the Alzheimer's impact movement, and other ways you can get involved if you're called to really be part of this in a different way. So Jackie, you wouldn't mind sharing your experience with the AIM Leadership Society?
Sure. Thanks, Josh. And Teresa, thank you. I'll tell you, if you look up the word motivation, your picture would be there. Very inspiring. Thank you, Teresa, again. So, yeah, Josh, you're right. One aspect of AIM's record of effectiveness is really, I kind of think of it as a twofold tactical strategy. So one of the strategies is a grassroots one. And Teresa and John have well described that with this broad base of inspired and passionate advocates. Get themselves educated about the priorities, and then they use a variety of communication channels. Teresa give us very specific examples of how she communicates with her clear and eloquent voice. So that grassroots approach is one, and another is a grass top strategy. And that's where we have philanthropic leadership of some of AIM's generous donors that drives our policy priorities. And this is where some really deep congressional relationships are created, and then they're nurtured over time, where we have long and private and meaningful conversations taking place with members of Congress, where we can really educate them in depth about the impacts of dementia on our nation and why they need to care and take action. But so much more than that, we don't only want them to support our priorities, we want them to champion our cause, to rally their colleagues in Congress to also support our priorities. So we're all about creating real champions in Congress. So the AIM Leadership Society, and you see the various levels of giving on the screen. This is that other way, this grass tops way, where we're ensuring that among all the multitude of agenda items on the plates of these congressional members, Alzheimer's remains a top priority for them. Now, just a word about it, we focus the Leadership Society primarily on those members of Congress who are in leadership positions, like chairing certain committees where our bills pass through. So they have a lot of influence, and we also focus on up-and-coming congressional leaders. So you can imagine the opportunities for that kind of powerful, influential leadership to unite support in Congress around our priorities. And I want to re-emphasize again what I said previously, and John also emphasized. We in AIM-PAC are fastidious. We are fastidious about balancing AIM-PAC support between the parties of Congress. I really think back, I don't think I've ever seen the allocation from AIM-PAC for Democrat and Republican members of Congress to be off by more than 1 or 2 percentage points at any given time, which is basically just a rounding situation. AIM is devoutly purple and nonpartisan. So I just want to be sure that is made perfectly clear. We currently have in the Leadership Society, in the levels that you see here, about 100 members. So I would just encourage any of you, if you have an interest in learning more about what AIM Leadership Society is about, or if you know someone who would be interested in this, reach out to any of us on the call today. We'd be happy to give you more information. Back to you, Josh.
Yeah, and thank you, Jackie. And it's, I really appreciate hearing your experience from this perspective in the Leadership Society, and really ways in which others on this call who might be interested can get involved. So thank you so much. Next up, and finally for the last part of our presentation, I want to bring John back up to talk about how voters feel about Alzheimer's as an election issue. John.
Thanks, Josh. Thank you, Josh, and I thank you. I know we're almost to the hour. I appreciate you for those who have stayed with us. I do want to go through, as Josh said, a couple of slides to talk about how voters think about Alzheimer's disease. We're obviously very passionate about this. It's very close to us, but not all Americans have had the experience that we have had with Alzheimer's and dementia. And of course, we know that elected leaders, that politicians, candidates, well, they absolutely respond to polls. So one of the things that AIM and the association does about every election cycle is do polling and try and gauge how voters feel about Alzheimer's as an election issue. Poll we did last year, again at the start of this election cycle, sort of lays that out. And I want to share some top-line data. And a few of you, some of our longtime advocates, may have seen this in the last year. The next slide, as you'll see, we tested the perception of what voters think about Congress and how Congress is doing in terms of fighting Alzheimer's disease, a little bit of a scorecard, if you will. And nearly 2/3 think that Congress is not doing enough. If you'll click the next one, Josh, this breaks across almost evenly, as you can see, Democrats, Republicans, Independent, again, picking up that theme that we've talked about so many times today. This truly is a purple issue. When you really dive down into some of the different demographics, especially demographics that are going to be so key to this election for both Republicans and Democrats, thinking about women, thinking about African Americans, thinking about Latinx, how disproportionately those populations are impacted by Alzheimer's and dementia, we wanted to test that as well and see what women and African Americans, which I'll share here with you, what their perception is on what elected leaders are doing. When we shared that senior women are much more likely to be living with Alzheimer's disease, overall women's intensity around support for government doing more, broadly, government must do more in the fight against Alzheimer's disease, was up to over 3/4, 77%. Click on the next one. And then the next question, when we also stated the fact in the poll that 1 in 5 working women who are caregivers have either gone from a full-time to a part-time job, 84% are much more supportive of government doing more. Again, broad question here, but you can see that women who are disproportionately impacted by Alzheimer's disease, when they know that, when voters, regardless, Republicans, Democrats, Independent, they are much, much more engaged and want their government to take on this crisis. The next slide, you'll see we also tested, again, as I mentioned, same with African Americans. So when African Americans learned that they were 2 times more likely than whites to have Alzheimer's disease, 84% became more supportive of the government getting involved in fighting this disease. So we're going to see that. This is, by the way, data that we share with the Trump campaign, the Biden campaign, the national political committees for both Republicans and Democrats. We also have this available. You can find this data on allsimpact.org. And Josh, I don't know if you're going to be sharing these slides with attendees afterwards, but we'll make sure that you get that. But I think this is something for you all as you're talking to your network, your friends, your family, people in your community, regardless of your partisanship, regardless of your political ideology, you're sharing your story. These are things to kind of keep in the back of your minds because these are obviously data points that I think really resonate. These specifically that I shared with you are 2 of the most probably talked about data points that I have both with Republicans and Democrats, really diving down to seeing how these different demographic sections think about Alzheimer's disease. These different voters think about Alzheimer's. Next slide. So I always like to throw this quote out for any of our advocates. I think it is very appropriate for the times that we're in now. Former president, of course, Thomas Jefferson, saying we in America don't have the government by the majority. We have the government by the majority who participate. And that's why we encourage all of you, everyone on this phone, to get involved. Whether you've been advocates for years and years or you're brand new to advocacy, your voice is what matters. And that truly is it's what's going to make the difference. Next slide. A couple of things just to point out. I just wanted to touch on a little bit about where we've really been following, and probably many of you have been following. Maybe you wish you hadn't been following the presidential race over the last 6 months or year. And one of the houses, bodies of Congress I wanted just to draw your attention to is the Senate, because in the last couple of months, that's looking a lot more competitive than it probably did 6 months ago. I think right now it will be hard for the Republicans maybe to take back the House, but the Democrats definitely have an opportunity to take back the Senate, where they probably didn't have that opportunity again maybe 6 months ago. And just to highlight, as you'll see here, in brown, tan, a couple of states where you have real marquee Senate races, lots of time, money, and effort that are going to be poured into those. I just wanted to point that out. I'm stating the obvious for you Arizonans on the call, but Arizona is going to be a real hotbed of activity in that race. With Senator McSally up for re-election this year. So for those of advocates who are on the call from Arizona, for example, regardless of your politics, if you have an opportunity to talk with the candidates in that race, tell them why you're an advocate. If you have the opportunity and you want to volunteer for a candidate or campaign, please go do that. And just next slide. Just a couple of things to share with you. And again, I know so many of you on this call probably have been involved in maybe your own communities or politics for years and years. But for those of you who haven't, just a few words of wisdom. First of all, any candidate, volunteering from any candidate is okay. They don't have to be running for president, Congress, or whatever. Even your city council, your county council, really those men and women are going to have a huge impact on you and your communities. Get involved. And again, tell them why you're an Alzheimer's advocate, how you've been impacted by this. I think one of the things you'll find, and all of us, I think, probably have had this happen to us to some degree, is that the person you're talking to about why you're an Alzheimer's advocate will share with you their Alzheimer's story. Most likely, they've had a loved one, a friend, family member, someone they know who's been impacted by Alzheimer's disease. Second, make sure you're sharing your story everywhere. One of the things that we counsel and try and train advocates on is really repeating that story, sharing that over and over and over again about why you're an advocate in this fight. And then essentially asking candidates, Republicans, Democrats, any level, what are they going to do about this disease when they get to their elected office, when they go to the State House, when they go to Washington, D.C., what are they going to do in the fight against Alzheimer's disease? And let me just say this. If they say the words, I don't know, or I'm not sure, that's totally okay. That is then your opportunity. It's the opportunity then for the association and AIM to educate them, to talk about the policy solutions that we have before us and that we're going to continue to put before legislative bodies on how they can change how Alzheimer's disease is treated and eventually cured, and how we can work with caregivers and people living with the disease. And then finally, I think just showing up, calling a campaign headquarters, asking how you can help. Going to a debate, going to a local town hall or forum. There are a number of different ways that you can get involved. If you want to explore some different ways, reach out to your public policy staff member in your state. Talk about some of the different ways locally that you can get involved. That picture there, I just have to show, I think about Josh and about a dozen advocates, some of you may be on the call, went to a political rally in San Diego last year. And in that sea of people, if you can squint, just at the very in the middle of that picture are those advocates there dressed in purple. So in that sea of people, there still was a purple presence. So I just had to share that with everyone. And then next slide. And then finally, I just want to leave you all with this. This is hopefully a wealth of information and resources at your disposal. That's the AIM website, allsimpact.org. You can find out about all the policy priorities that Jackie talked about earlier. You can find out about information about how to get involved in AIM, how to do peer-to-peer recruiting, all the things that Teresa talked about. You can find here on the AIM site. We also have a page here that I've highlighted, which is our 2020 election page. We're going to be updating that with new materials next week, where we'll have things like a candidate's guide for both federal and state candidates that you can share with any candidates in your community who are running for office. And it talks about things like our federal priorities in Washington. Talks about our national state policy priorities, and then also things like our long-term care recommendations that the association just released a few weeks ago and that are already having a major impact in communities around the country because of COVID-19. So some fantastic resources for you there. Also for those advocates and ambassadors and ACT team members, you know that this is a place that you can also record interactions that you have with elected leaders, members of Congress, and state officials. So this really can be your one-stop shop and resource, and hope all of you will take advantage of it. So thanks again. I'll pause there, Josh, and see if there are any comments or questions.
I think we had one question in the comment box, and this will be the last question we're going to take just for the sake of time. And if you have any further questions, do reach out to your policy managers or policy staff member you work with. But I had a question asking about where we got the polls and the recent polling data that you shared with us. Where does that come from?
Thank you. It was a poll that AIM, in association with the Alzheimer's Association, conducted. So we went out and hired a firm called Public Opinion Strategies. It leans to be a Republican polling firm. They worked with an affiliate Democratic polling firm to come up with the poll. We helped write the questions. They then did the poll themselves. It was a phone poll that was done nationwide. I believe there were about 1,200 respondents. And an equal representation of Democrats, Republicans, and Independents in that poll. But that was very important to us, and you've heard that theme again throughout the last hour, making sure both Republicans and Democratic pollsters had an opportunity to work with us.
Awesome. Thank you, John. And, you know, it's always great to be reminded that, you know, Alzheimer's is purple, red and blue. You know, we are a bipartisan issue. We are focused on finding a world without Alzheimer's disease. And it's always great to know that we are attacking this from all angles. And the work All's Impact does with the candidates is so important today and in the future, because we never know, you know, that conversation we have today while they're running for president, when they're senator next year, that conversation still happened. And it'll carry with no matter where they are. So it's always important that we keep up the good fight. So thank you so much, John.
Thank you.
Great. And then just a few housekeeping items. So I appreciate everybody still being on this call. Just a few housekeeping items. If you want to learn more about AIM and you want to learn more about All's Impact, please do check out our website. Allsimpact.org has a lot of wonderful information on what are our current policy priorities, ways in which you can take action. This next slide kind of shows you how you can lead the way by joining the AIM Leadership Society and just learning more about it. Allsimpact.org is also where all of you should be reporting your actions. So anytime you do have those conversations, let's say you run into Senator Elizabeth Warren in the grocery store, do share that information with us. It's important that our team in DC and our team in Sacramento are aware of these conversations that happen, because that helps us do our work in the Capitol. So please do remember to log into allsimpact.org, and do remember to report any interactions you have with your electeds, even if it's a tweet or a letter, an email. That's important for us to know. And then finally, on the right, you can see here's a location for you to join AIM. So if you have yet to join AIM as an AIM member, today's the day that you will be doing it. Go to allsimpact.org, check out our website, explore, but do take that time today to join AIM if you have yet to do it. And then the last two housekeeping items we have. Upcoming advocacy trainings, June 17th, we'll be discussing the National Alzheimer's Project Act, huge foundational piece on our public policy in regards to the worlds of Alzheimer's disease. Really looking at the National Alzheimer's Project Act and what that's really done for us in this movement of getting closer towards cure. And then on June 24th, we're going to discuss our annual advocacy plan that we'll be working with for the rest of the year. And so that's really important advocacy training to listen to because it'll help give you direction and guidance as to what you should be doing throughout the year. And then finally, we have an advocacy opportunity for everybody. June 15th is World Elder Abuse Awareness Day, and that really ties into what we're fighting in terms of elder justice and our new piece of legislation, our Elder Justice Act. So, we strongly encourage on that day, June 15th, that all of you are activated and all of you are reaching out to your elected officials on that day. Your public policy staff will be reaching out to you to help remind you of that day, but June 15th is a wonderful opportunity to really raise our issue and really raise our voice in regards to elder justice and protecting our most vulnerable communities, which is our Alzheimer's community and our dementia community. So with all that being said, I hope all of you have a wonderful week. I hope that you really join the All's Impact movement and really help support our work we do there. And you mark on your calendars June 15th for World Elder Abuse Awareness Day. So with that being said, thank you all of you for attending and hope you all have a great week. Take care.
Good job. Thank you. Wow. That was about 3 hours of content in an hour and 15 minutes. Well done, everybody. Well done. Who's still on the line?
I'm here.
Okay.
I think you need to close the recording, Susan.